Avios is a term that you'll hear relatively frequently in the world of points and miles just because they are everywhere. And this is a program that you can use to book a lot of different flights. The rates are generally sort of similar, but there are differences between the programs, and I'll tell you about those. Just know that pretty much every partner can transfer through British Airways. There are a couple partners that transfer directly, but you can count on British Airways to transfer them for you and relatively instantly. So here's an example of booking an American Airlines flight with Avios. Now this is not a global flight, but just for example, if you were to book in the 650 mile or under band, Qatar Airways would be your best bet. Finnair gets to be the best after you get to 2,000 miles and above. And then British Airways, Aer Lingus, and Iberia pretty much all have the same award chart for American Airlines flights. Here's an example of what this could look like. So a flight from Chicago to Charlotte, if you were to pay cash, $413, but there is award space available. And if you booked it with Qatar Airways, it would cost 9,500 points. If you booked it with Iberia, Aer Lingus, or British Airways, it would cost 12,000 points. If you booked it with Finnair, it would cost 16,500 points. You'd have to call or chat them. And if you booked it with American Airlines themselves, it would be 17,500. So by now you may be getting the idea that the best way to book an airline's flight is to transfer points to a partner and book with the partner rather than with the airline directly, particularly for the airlines that have dynamic pricing and they're going to charge people a lot at the very last minute. Sometimes though, if they have seats available, they're going to leave those seats available to their partners because I'm assuming there's some sort of agreement where they have to give so many of their seats to their partners in order to be a part of the alliance. This is a situation where you'd probably rather buy points than buy the flight. So Qatar Airways is charging 9,500 points for this. You could buy 10,000 Avios through Finn Airways or 10,000 for 250 through Qatar, and you would save over $150 regardless of which program. So this doesn't happen super often, but buying points is a helpful way to be able to fly in these cabins. If you know how to do it and you know that there's space available, buy the points, make the flight, save a lot of money. Finnair is interesting because they have a standard award chart to fly American Airlines, which is actually less points to fly to Hawaii than it is to fly within the continental United States. Don't ask me why that is. Alaska, on the other hand, is 11,000 within the continental United States. So if Alaska has the Saver Award availability, then you can find it on Finnair by transferring 11,000 to them. And if you want to go to Hawaii, it would be 13,500. So you wouldn't transfer your points to Alaska, you would transfer your points to Finnair, and then you would call Finnair and say, hey, I want to book these flights. Just don't transfer your points until you've talked to the agent and then you're sure that Finnair can book it for you. Finnair has a partnership with Japan Airlines that charges you the same rate regardless of how far you fly in Japan. Finnair also has a sweet spot if you are flying to Europe or Asia or South Africa on Qatar Airways and you want to go through Doha. You can see these rates here in economy class, 17,000 or 41,250 between Qatar and Europe. There's some long flights within those regions, and so you could potentially get some good deals there. One cool thing I like about Finnair that has never happened to me on any other airline is they actually let me book an award trip for like 5 people over chat. So you can chat with them and they say, yeah, we can confirm the seats, and they booked it for me. Qatar Airways does have some great deals if you can find them, and they're very hard to find except at the very, very last minute from Doha to the United States and from the United States to Doha. Qsuites is well known as one of the best business class products in the world, and you can book it for 70,000 Avios provided that you can find a seat, which I would look on seats.aero for and set an alert for if you really wanted to have a trip like that. Here's the award chart for the single partner award prices. This is if you're booking a one world partner not within the continental United States, I believe. So if you want to fly American Airlines to Japan, you check how far the airport is that you want to fly from to the airport in Japan, and then you would be able to book it through British Airways, Iberia, or Aer Lingus. British Airways tends to have the best functionality on their website, but you may want to check Iberia and Aer Lingus if the taxes and fees are pretty high, because I have seen that they are a little bit different from time to time. Here's a rate on Iberia in business class going from Miami to Madrid, and you can see it's 42,500 Avios. If you leverage the transfer bonuses that we talked about, you could book that flight for pretty cheap, an overnight flight that would land you well rested in Spain. Hard to find seats, but again, set the alerts and let them go, and you should be able to find them eventually. Aer Lingus has a cool deal on their own product, actually, not booking with a partner. You can fly to all of these airports on the right side of the line for 13,000 miles to Dublin. On the left side of the line, still not too expensive, you can fly for $16,250 Avios. British Airways would be great for flights within Europe if the cash prices were high. Now, given that there are a host of very cheap airlines in Europe, this may not be the best use of your points, but if the cash price is high, or if you're traveling with bags, Ryanair generally is very strict with bags, and a lot of the carriers are very strict with bags, so consider looking at British Airways. Even the peak prices are not very high for the lower distances. You can see there's a baby icon here, and that is because if you bring a lap child under 2 years of age, you can just pay 10% of the points price that you paid. If you're a parent, this can be a great way to use your points and only spend 10% extra to fly 2 of you. Life Miles is a program that can be pretty frustrating, but if they do have the availability, their rates are pretty good, simply because they don't pass along taxes and fees. Now, there are only a few places where they're going to beat Air Canada in terms of their rates, but when they do, it can be pretty nice. This flight from LA to Frankfurt, for example, on the 747, one of the few airlines that still flies this plane, is 69,000 miles and $53 in taxes and fees. Life Miles also has this cool thing where you can pay different rates for different cabins. So you could fly to Zurich, which is the long flight in business class, and then you could go down to Cairo and not spend an extra 7,000 points or so flying business on the short flight, just fly economy on that flight, and it's no problem to do that with Life Miles. Life Miles is relatively unique in that way. I really like United Airlines because they're so generous with the amount of reward space that they release to their partners. Booking flights in United Airlines is generally not going to be the best way to do it, but if you are going to do it, here's some cool things to do. You can fly this island hopper. This is a very unique flight in the world because there's not enough traffic going to each one of these islands, so they fly through each individual one. Some great dive spots along here and some very nice people. I've actually flown this flight before. A flight that's not pictured here also is from Guam to Palau. Again, one of the nicest dive spots in the world, and you could pay cash and it would be $645, or you could pay points and it's only $15,000 plus taxes and fees. United is actually not passing along a fuel surcharge here. It's just that Palau requires this of anyone entering the country, so when you go out of the country, you won't have to pay that surcharge. You can also book flights with United Miles on ANA, which is a United partner. This can be a relatively cheap way to get around Japan. The Shinkansen, which is the high-speed train in Japan, can be a little bit expensive, so using your points can be a great option. And the taxes and fees are actually less than they are in the United States. The United Excursionist Perk is a very interesting way to use your miles on United if you have a lot of them. Now, if you don't have a lot of them, maybe just skip to the next section. But if you do have some and you want to use them, hypothetically, here's what you could do. You could fly from DC to Switzerland, and then from Switzerland to Rome, and then from Rome back to DC, and the flight from Switzerland to Rome would be free. And that's actually what it shows when you do an advanced search here on United's website. You'll see in business class, 88,000, and then 0, and then 80,000. But if you want to get really tricky, which United, I guess, hasn't caught this, or maybe it's too complicated to book that they just don't care, but you can actually just fly from San Francisco to San Diego and back on a round trip, and then make a multi-city booking, so it's all like one booking, and include Dublin to Istanbul on Turkish Airlines, which is a United partner, and it will also price out at 0. So you'd have to be pretty creative to figure this out. You also have to take the first flight from San Francisco to San Diego, or whichever way you go. You have to take the first flight, otherwise your second flight will be canceled. But this is a creative way if you want to use your miles and get some great value out of them. Try this out, play around with it. Seems like a fun way to get some cool value out of your miles.